6:05. We have an interim quorum. When being the meeting. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here on time. Sorry for the slight delay for technicalities. I'm Rick Fernandez. I'm the chair of the CAC. This is the February 1 meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee. Could I ask the secretary, please, to call the roll?
Rick Fernandez.
We're here.
Bill Roberts.
Here.
Carolyn Brown.
Here.
Hoyt Prindle.
Here.
Miaza Morrison. Aya Yassin.
Here.
Stephen Hollenkamp.
Here.
Nicole Rice.
Present.
Christina Costa.
Present.
Artie Fryer.
Here.
Nicholas Glover. Don Skelton.
Here.
Ed Mrzewski.
Here.
Sharon Gamond.
Here.
Terrence Trott. I believe he was excused. Drew Newman. Johnny, he was also excused, correct?
That's right.
And Joshua Frank.
Yep.
We do have an in-person quorum. Chair, would you please call for a vote of consent for remote participation?
Is there a motion from the floor for remote participation? Motion. Okay. Josh Frank, is there a second?
Second.
I have seen seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That moves us to public comment, 3 minutes per. I don't know who's been signed up. Anybody have the list? I see Chris Vella sitting in the gallery. I don't know if we have anybody on virtual.
I don't see anyone online. I can see hands raised.
Okay. Well, Mr. Vella, 3 minutes. You know the drill, sir.
Yes. All right. This is Chris Vella, 33605 in Ybor City. Thank you for accepting my comments today. So there's 2 action items on your list right now. One is talking about electrification, and which is like EV charging infrastructure, truck parking, and HART maintenance facilities. So go ahead and pass that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with like supporting HART. There's certainly nothing wrong with the EV charging. I do think that we just have to tread that one really carefully, because I know 5-10 years from now, FDOT's going to come back and say, well, the cars are electric, so we can still widen lanes. There's not going to be that much environmental impact. So my thought behind that is, I think as we have these conversations about EV charging stations, we need to look at the inventory of our overpasses in downtown and prioritize our county and our city fleets to use that service, because there we can benchmark and see the performance of that. And I think if we add charging stations for e-cargo bites, looking into doing third-party leasing with freight companies to actually take advantage of the EV charging facilities, plus do micro depots to consolidate freight to reduce that last mile. Those are some really great ideas, I think, that can couple with this. So those are just my comments on that. Definitely push that forward. There is a part B to your agenda about performance targets. Definitely let the MPO know that they've been doing a really, really bad job. Out of the 7 categories of the crash types that you see in your packet, we failed in all of those. We have over, I think, 224 plus or minus deaths this past year. We most certainly can do better. And we just need to work into looking at other solutions in road widening. We need to look at making intersections safer. We need to look at mobility choices and so on. But definitely pass that on and just let the MPO know that they're not, or TPO, not doing a great job. I'm going to roll on to like my final comment here, which is about the Reconnecting pilot grant situation that happened earlier this week. It's been a very long week. Maybe it was last week, I can't remember, but I have to say personally, I felt pretty, I wouldn't say offended, but I just felt pretty shocked. A lot of us have been talking about this project for well over 4 years. We've certainly been talking about the Boulevard project here in the CAC for some time. I know Josh Frank mentioned about talking to Kathy Castor's office. I did too. I talked to Secretary Fox during the Obama administration about this years prior. I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get a lot of people to come up and talk about this. And my issue is this. This is kind of new news that just kind of percolated out of 4 years on a meeting that was basically on the fine line of being acceptable within the bylaws of the TPO. Everything was rushed. I felt blindsided personally. I think that the board themselves did not know from staff that there are 2 categories. One is for construction, one is for planning. We were looking at the planning section of what the grant allows. The other bit of information I think the board was confused on is they thought that, well, this is going to be a move to ban cars and start the project right away. It wasn't that. It's just a feasibility study to look into the situation to determine whether it's going to work or not. And in the favor of the opposition, they could have come back and said, this is such a baloney idea, we're not going to do it. But it deserved a chance to really be talked about. I know that there was reasons listed in the agenda. However, those reasons were not really talked about during that meeting. They're more procedural, board procedural and fund procedural decisions that could be circumnavigated and to arrive to the conclusion that yes, we can still do that grant and yes, we can still do that study. So I can't specifically fault anybody on a technicality here. My point is that we spend a lot of hours, a lot of money.
Chair, that's 3.
Again, you know the drill. Just dig into this a little bit more. Thank you.
I'd be willing to make a motion to extend a minute to
I just need
allow
another
Mr.
minute.
Bell to finish.
I just need another minute or so.
Anyone
That's
have
all right.
objection to extending?
Yeah.
So take another
Yeah.
60 seconds.
Okay, thank you. So my point is that this business is not going to go away. We're going to revisit this grant application again. So we have to make sure that when that time does come, that we look at it the correct way and that all the information is up front, that we don't have any last minute changes. Again, I would prefer for somebody here to dig a little bit deeper to find out what happened and why the information was relayed so late. I'm not going to say it's because of David Gwynn, because he knows better. I think we had all the information up front, and for some odd reason, that information wasn't communicated clearly to the board. So the board did not have the necessary tools or information to make a good calculated decision on this. It looks really bad on our end to DC, the feds. We certainly want partnerships. So again, this is going to come up. Talk about it. Let's do a lessons learned. Like, come kumbaya here and figure out what we can do better next time. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Is there any other public comment in the room? Anyone else holding online?
Still don't see any hands on.
All right, before we move on for public comment, we do have for now, a guest, soon to be a colleague in the room, Jim Davidson, sitting over here to my left. He's he's an appointee yet not approved of Josh Wastel, if I recall correctly, County Commissioner. Jim, would you like to take a minute to just introduce yourself?
No, I'm just looking forward. I was telling some people that were here earlier, this will be my 6th committee that I've been on for the county, and they're all important. This one particularly, things it deals with, I think, are coming to a head, and that I'm just glad to be here, and I look forward to exchanging ideas and things with everyone.
For future reference, just in terms of etiquette, do you prefer that you be referred to as Dr. or Jim? Okay. Just not late for dinner. All right, fair enough. Okay, well, welcome to the clan, and we'll see. I think you're up for approval at this next meeting
Yes.
of the board, so you'll be here as a member of the committee in March. Understanding the timing correctly. All right. If there's nothing else by way of public comment, that moves us to item 5 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 4, 2023 meeting? There's a motion from Aya Yassin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ed Majerski seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing
Mr.
those-
Chair,
There seems to be, okay. Christina Costa, you have discussion on the motion.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to move forward with approving the minutes, but rereading the minutes and proofing them brought to my attention a point that I want to make to our committee, which is we had a safety report that included improvement of our a crash reduction. And I've seen this year 2 troubling trends when reporting safety data and Vision Zero. One is measuring against 2021. That was the year of the pandemic when there were so few cars on our roads that speeding became a real problem, a worse problem than it is. And we had very high crash rates. So comparing and reporting data against 2021 is really worrisome because it gives a false impression that we're actually doing better where roadway safety and crash reduction is concerned. And the second note I'll make to our committee about roadway safety is that New Jersey City declared that it had achieved Vision Zero, but they included a little caveat that they were not including their state roads or county roads. So I just bring those 2 points into the committee's knowledge base as it pertains to the minutes. Thank you.
Christine, are you suggesting that the minutes as presented and the subject of this motion need to be amended in some way?
No, I don't think that that's necessary because these are things that were not pointed out and recorded within the minutes, but they prompt my desire to share that information.
Well, let me get back to the motion on the floor. We have a motion to approve the minutes with a second. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Online? See no other discussion? No comments? Any comments in the queue?
No chats, comments, and no one has their hand raised.
Okay. That being the case, voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Minutes approved. Moves us to action items. Item A, tip amendments, new HART maintenance facility. I believe Johnny Wong is going to be gracing us with the presentation today. Is that right?
That is right. So, all right, I hope you all can see my screen. I am not Roger Matthew. I'm filling in on his behalf for Johnny Wong TPO staff. And this evening, I'm going to brief you on 7 tip amendments. As described on the title slide, I'll describe them in a little bit more detail on this slide. There are 7 amendments that were requested by FDOT to add funds to the fiscal 22 through 23 tip, which is the current adopted. 2 amendments pertain to a project belonging to HART, which is the heavy maintenance facility. 2 amendments regard a project that FDOT owns. Those are 2 way stations on I-4, which include truck parking. There's a lighting project on SR-60, a resurfacing project on Dale Mabry, and an electric vehicle charging infrastructure installation project also on I-4. The first project relates to the HART heavy maintenance facility. As I'm sure most of you know, this has been HART's top priority for a number of years. We've done some reporting on this project in previous years pertaining to other tip amendments. It is in a state of disrepair, and HART is currently seeking some funds to move forward on those repairs. The purpose of this amendment is a little confusing, so I hope that it becomes clear as I explain it and with the assistance of the PowerPoint slides. The FTAT code on the far right-hand side of the slide in that first column in the ledger stands for Federal Transit Administration transfer. So on the top portion of this slide, you'll see $9.22 million circled in red. Those were FTA funds that were programmed for bus replacements. We already passed the tip amendment to move those funds from bus replacements toward the heavy maintenance facility. That was the subject of a roll forward amendment. So that 9.22 million is a part of this TIP amendment. And on this slide at the top, you'll see that $4 million have been marked as being rolled forward into heavy maintenance facility for this fiscal year. So the $4 million that's already intended to go toward the heavy maintenance facility, plus the 9.22 that is being moved, totals up to the 13.22 million shown on the bottom of this screen. The next project in the TIP amendment relates to 2 weigh stations along I-4. These are out in the Sefner area. These 2 weigh stations are in need of some additional truck parking spaces. At both stations, there are currently 12 spots, and this project will fund an additional 5 at each location. It's a little bit difficult to see. Let me see if I can move some things around on the screen. So this is an aerial view showing where those 5 additional spaces will go. To accomplish this, the pavement will need to be reinforced to accommodate the weight of the trucks, and then it'll just need to be striped. This slide is showing the addition of $2.5 million for one of the weigh stations and 2.3 for the other weigh station. These projects are virtually identical. The reason for the difference of about 250K is just differences at the location. One will need to be reinforced a little bit more. And when the parking is complete, hopefully the trucks will be able to park in a place that doesn't interfere with weigh station operations. This next project is a lighting project on SR 60. The limits are from US 41 to 301. Lighting is a safety improvement that we consider under the Vision Zero program category. So the benefits of this project are that it will enhance visibility for all users. Most of the corridor from East 50th Street to 301 is currently unlit. So this project will have TECO installing light poles along the majority of the segment. At all other locations along the corridor where there are already poles, the existing fixtures will be used, but they're going to be upgraded to LED. So at the completion of this project, the entire corridor will be lit with new LEDs. The exception along this segment is the bridge over the Tampa Bypass Canal. That structure won't allow for the light poles to be installed. So at this time, there will be no lighting along the or over the canal. And this isn't part of the TIP amendment, but just as an FYI, this segment is also scheduled for a resurfacing project in the next fiscal year. So over the next 2 years, with the resurfacing and with the lighting, the character of this corridor should change pretty dramatically. And just so you all can see, this slide is showing the addition of a little more than $700,000 for construction in this fiscal year. The next project is resurfacing on Dale Mabry. The southern portion of it extends all the way up to McDill Air Force Base, moving a little bit north to Pinewood. It's about a 1.5 mile segment. It's just a mill resurfacing project, nothing fancy there. This slide in the comparative report shows that we're advancing construction funding into 2023, $50,000. The rest of the project will be constructed in the next fiscal year. The last project with this TIP amendment is I-4 electric vehicle charging infrastructure installation. So FDOT is going to fund the installation of these chargers at locations along I-4 to be determined. FDOT District 7 will open up this project to proposals, and the proposals are what's really going to facilitate the details of the project. So based on the proposals they get, that will identify the charger type, the connector type, the level, whether they're fast chargers or I forget what the alternative is, but fast, super fast, or not so fast, and the
Type 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. We're actually leading electric vehicle charging study right now, which is why I know what little I do, but hopefully as that study progresses, I'll learn more. All right, so $900,000 will be placed into fiscal year 2023 to facilitate the installation of those chargers. Because this is a TIP amendment, we have followed our public participation process. So prior to the TPO board meeting, we have published a newsletter. We have put out some informational flyers on social media. We published a webpage, and signs have been placed in the ground at locations where these projects will be moved forward. This is an action item. The recommended action from staff is to approve the 7 amendments to the fiscal year 22-23 TIP, and then recommend approval to the TPO board. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions or discussion? Josh Franks, first hand I saw.
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. I have a few questions. First is, can you go back to the EV spaces, or sorry, the truck park?
Yes.
That seems like a lot. 2.5 million for 5 spaces in one, and 2.5 and change for 5 spaces in another. That's like $500,000 a space, if my math is right. I'm putting a driveway in at my house, and it's like $20,000 worth of concrete.
Yeah.
Is this like some special structural 8-inch depth kind of has to bear the weight of a semi truck, or is it like?
I'm gonna defer to
for some other reason?
I'm gonna defer to the engineer on this one. If you know the answer, if you might ship it in. I'm not really sure. I just
like a lot.
I know that the cost is going to increase due to the reinforcement required because this truck's really heavy.
Right. I mean, it definitely does that, but is it design infrastructure?
Let's see, I think this is just construction.
So it will be the material, probably the material required to see that much.
Oh, that just seems really high. We're getting electric vehicles charging stations for $900,000. $5 million for 10 parking spaces seems like crazy.
Oh, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. This is PE and construction.
Okay, that makes more sense. So that was just one comment or question. The second one is the LED lights. I'm assuming that the fact that some are purple is no longer the case. Like that's not a chance of that happening anymore.
I'm not really sure. I'm gonna follow up on that and get back to you.
Because if we're doing this for safety, those purple ones are not as safe as the white LEDs. And if there is any check that TICO can do to make sure that we're not getting purple ones, that way they don't have to come back and replace them, that'd be good. Because that's been a problem before. Yeah, they're defective.
That's weird. They're also like still going up.
Yeah,
I
right.
see them still in new areas. That's exactly what I was going to ask.
And then the last question, again, quick hitter, is that anytime that there's a resurfacing project, I'm always asking or wondering, is there anything else that can be done with it? So, for example, there's a lot of places I work at that do dig once type of policies. So if they're going to mill and resurface, if there's any restriping that's in the work program, or if there's any quick build type Vision Zero type of projects that are somewhat in the pipeline, it would be worth always checking to make sure that we're not going to come back and undo that or wait for its 80-year time horizon for whenever they're able to get back to it. So for that section of Dale Neighbor, it seems like it's worth looking to see if there's anything planned.
I know DOT's recently been making a really strong effort to try to bundle those projects because you're right, there are economies of scale if you can do them at the same time. You avoid the cost of utilities and other things.
Equipment's already
I'll
out there.
check with the DOT PM and see if they can provide an update or an idea of whether or not there are any safety projects that have already been planned. So yeah, I can get back to you on that. Okay.
I can, this is Connor, TPO staff. You may remember we presented another TIP amendment last January around that time. And there is a safety project near this segment. I think it's from Wisconsin Ave to Ballast Point. And there are hog signals. I think it's in preliminary engineering, also by FDOT, but I can look up that FPN and get a status for you.
Just seems like it would save money. And if the equipment's already going to be out there, it's really just the material and labor cost, which isn't that much comparative to, having to come back and do everything over again. So.
Are there any other questions or discussion over here on the right side of the room?
Yeah, I was just curious with the on the HART project, the fact they're going to use this money for the maintenance facility, does that mean they're not going to be doing bus replacement project?
So I know that HART they've been applying for a bunch of FTA grants to replace buses. I think that they won a significant sum of money recently. I wish I could tell you exactly how much, but they're applying for grants to upgrade the fleet to electric. You're right in that the SU funds that we had originally intended to program for bus replacements, that column is zero now. So until HART tells us that they don't want to repurpose the money we have programmed for bus replacements to the heavy maintenance facility, I think that the bus replacements will continue to show a zero. It's a long-winded way of saying you're right.
I was just asking questions. I didn't know if it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
That satisfy you? Did you have
Yeah.
follow-up?
No, that's not.
Any other questions over here? Any questions on the left side of the room? There's one online. Bill, somebody's online with a question? Christina Costa?
Yeah, thanks. I've had my hand up. I'm not sure what the best way is to chime in on the conversation because I can't see everybody in the room that well, and I don't hear the conversation kind of happening amongst yourselves. So just let me know. I'm going to use the raise my hand on the Zoom platform as, you know, the best way to say that I'm out here. Thank you for this presentation. A couple thoughts. I heard Josh bring up the purple lights, and I have read that those are in a state of recall. So I'm glad to hear about that. I also want to, I'm glad that Connor chimed in on the safety about the Southdale Mabry part of our presentation. And I wonder if we could, I'd like to make a motion or ask that we have FDOT come back to talk about that portion of surfacing in Southdale Mabry, so we can have an integrated look at what else, you know, where else the crashes have been, and what the latest is on those that intersection at Wisconsin. I know at Interbay there's a very high pedestrian activity around the McDonald's there. So there's just, I'd like to see that repaving in a more holistic exam of the roadway. Can I make a motion that we ask for that to be shared with our group?
Christine, I'm going to ask you to pocket that motion when we complete this particular item of business. I'll come back.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on the topic at issue?
Go ahead.
I'm still looking at Christine. Do you have any other questions?
Oh, no, those were my remarks. Thank you.
Okay. I have some.
Bill.
Passing the baton.
Bill, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have a couple of questions about the HART maintenance facility. First question is this a renovation of an existing facility, or does it include a construction of a new facility, possibly at a different location? What do we know about it?
I believe that it's a total reconstruction. I can't say for sure if it'll be in the same location.
Do we know how this project increased from 10 million a couple of months ago to what is now 13.2 today?
The total estimated cost of the project by my last count was about $70 million, but those estimates were provided some years back, so it's possible that it increased. Another wrinkle on this project is that because while they're constructing a new heavy maintenance facility, they'll need a satellite to actually do repairs and house the equipment and the buses. The satellite facility and the heavy maintenance main facility need to be done at the same time. So I believe that the grand total is approximately 150 million for both at the same time.
Not 13.2.
That's just the share that TPO can contribute with our discretionary funds. I know that the VOCC has contributed, City of Tampa has contributed, possibly some other agencies as well.
Okay. That's because sometimes it's hard to figure out what the part is really asking for. So we have a new total, and do we know if this project is going to be bid anytime soon, or are we just allocating funds forward in the tip? What's the timing of the project?
I'll have to reach out to HART staff and ask them to give us an update. I'm really not sure on that. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. And then my final comment is I'm glad Josh asked about the purple lighting because I went to experience that it's not very effective.
Bill, are you good? That's it?
Yes,
Done?
thank you.
Aya, did you have something?
Yes, so I just wanted to respond to Bill. So the fiscal year was $9.2 million. This is in fiscal year 23, which is, so that means, so in terms of, so fiscal year 23 already started in July of 2022, and it's gonna end June 30th. So that means it's gonna be bids between now and March, before end of June. So it will be bids within the next 6 months or 5 months.
Did you have any discussion?
Yes. One of the projects that we looked at today had like $50,000 that was for the current, to be added to the current fiscal year. I'm wondering, why are we seeing this project? Because we only have a threshold of the size of the projects that we see. Because a project $50,000, it has to be 2% increase or 2% change, or $2 million. So, or a change in limits for a specific threshold. So why are we seeing $50,000, and why is this not an administrative amendment rather than an amendment that has to go to the board?
We don't do administrative tip amendments anymore. With the new PPP update, any amendment to the tip has to be done by roll call at the board. So administrative amendments no longer exist. Chair, I see that.
I have Hoyt Prindle in the room. Hoyt, recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess it's just a point of clarification because we're not usually approving funds for buildings. Is that strictly because where the original source of the funds came from?
The HART maintenance facility, you're right. Normally we don't approve buildings, but because it's a transit facility that falls under the FTA rule for state of good repair of transit assets. So we've been working with HART on how to gain that, prioritize it in the tip. So unlike many other building projects, this one was able to be ranked and prioritized.
So I assume that means the West Shore Multimodal Center will probably be before us at some point as well.
I'll have to follow up.
Station.
I think that based on the definition or the justification used for the heavy maintenance facility, I don't see why not. But I haven't received any proposals to add it to the tip yet.
Because I guess where I'm also curious is that with the proposed BRT plan, and there's parking garages that are associated with that. I'm also curious if those might fall into the same. Be required to.
I think they might.
Is there any other discussion or questions in the room?
I was just to say very briefly about the purple lights. There is a page TICO made available for people to report them, and they're really quick at coming out to swap them out. So just a quick Google search and you can find it.
That comment was from Josh Frank, if anyone could not hear it. Just sound check for purposes of further discussion. Are folks on virtual hearing us all right?
I can hear you. I had my hand up, but it doesn't acknowledge it, I guess.
Well, I saw you. I just haven't gotten to you yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't know if we were, yeah.
You're here.
Ms. Yassine, we're having a difficult time. I'm having a difficult time hearing her. If she can direct her speech a little closer to the mic, that would be great.
Will do. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I can hear the speakers, but not always the speaking amongst the group.
Okay. So we need to keep our voices up a bit, I guess. All right.
Thank you. Yes.
No problem. Just chime in. Nikki, you had your hand up for question or discussion.
I've heard a few things about the lights from people on the board today, but right now TICO is still currently utilizing the same light sources that are blowing out. I've been through 2 lights on my property alone. There's also no illumination from those lights. It goes out into the roads. It just deadpans straight down. This has caused a lot of problems that people have been speaking to me directly about, citizens who are concerned about visibility at night. Until TECO has come up with a proper solution, and this recall is not, there's many cities affected by this. They're not getting the recall on it. I'm pretty concerned about spending that money to change the lighting to the way that they've done the LED versus having illumination that we have on 60 right now. And I don't know if we can withhold one of these lines in regards to the FDOT. These are FDOT requests, is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, because I can't see it on my phone. It's too small for me to see. I really feel this should be withheld until we have clear answers from TECO, because putting in the current light poles they've been putting in that have no broad illumination is causing problems for people who have photosensia or have vision issues. I no longer drive it. I cannot drive at night long distances. I cannot see on the road with the new lights TECO put in. And we still haven't gotten answers on this. And that's a lot of money for a stretch of road that's being allocated with no guarantees.
Any other comments? Nikki?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, I would like to make a motion to remove that line item request by FDOT until we have answers from TECO.
I'll ask you to hold that motion as well. Any other questions on the actual topic on the agenda? Discussion or questions for Johnny? The recommended action is on the screen. Approval of the 7 amendments to the FY 2022-23 TIP, and we recommend approval of the TPO board. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Seen has moved. Is there a second? Second. All right. Don Skelton has seconded. Is there discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to modify the motion to recommend the passage. Can you hear me? Yeah.
You can offer an amendment to the motion if that's what you'd like to do.
Yes.
All right.
Sorry.
Please state your stated amendment.
My stated amendment is that we pass the motion with the caveat that a requested status report be made of FDOT to come back and give us an update on that Southdale Mabry repaving and resurfacing in conjunction with the safety improvements that are already slated for the area, and provide ideas of what other safety improvements can be incorporated.
Okay, allowing for the fact that I'm expected to restate that for the record. First, I'm going to ask, is there a second to Christine's motion? Sharon Gamon seconds. Christine, I'm going to ask you to restate the motion, and please try to be as concise as possible.
Okay. The amended motion is that we accept these amendments with the request to FDOT for a status report in the future that incorporates the Southdale Mabry repaving and safety improvements that are already slated for the area, as well as potential additional safety improvements.
Does the secretary have an adequate take on the amendment that's been offered?
Mr. Chair, I'll pick that up when I review the recording.
All right. We have an amendment. We have a second. Is there any discussion on the amendment? All right. I see no discussion on the proposed amendment in the room. I see a hand. Nikki, is that the old hand or a new hand?
Oh, my apologies. I didn't lower it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Is there any discussion online on the amendment?
Yassine, I would like to just add more, because the changes that so these funds are going to be used for the design phase, right? Like the one for the Dale Mabry project. So during the design phase, after this money is approved, then the designer goes in and looks at all the possible safety and complete streets and additional pavement and striping and improvements that can be done. So currently, we cannot hold the amendment until actually we approve it. So we're gonna hold the amendment for the scope, because the scope is gonna come out during the design. So afterwards. So my recommendation is that we approve it, and then we can ask that we can have the designer come and present the proposed improvements before the construction goes and starts.
Okay, well, thank you for that comment. We have an amendment proposed that has been seconded. So I'm going to ask for a vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amended motion stated by Christina Costa? A roll call?
Bill Roberts.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Yes.
Rick Fernandez.
Yes.
Carolyn Brown.
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle.
Stepped out.
Aya Yasin.
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp.
Yes.
Nicole Rice.
Yes.
Christina Costa.
Yes.
Artie Fryer.
Yes.
Don Skelton.
Yes.
Ed Mrzewski.
Yes.
Sharon Gamond.
Yes.
Joshua Frank.
Yes.
The motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. That now takes us back to the original motion as amended. Any further discussion on the original motion as amended in the room?
I'm not sure I understand how what you're asking now differs from what we just did.
We just voted on an amendment to the motion. Now we have to go back to the original motion.
Okay.
Under Robert's rules. The original motion was to approve these 7 amendments. Christine offered an amendment that just passed. Now we come back to the original motion and vote on that as amended. Is there any further discussion in the room? Is there any further discussion online? Right. Our vice chair suggested a voice vote. I don't think there would be any objection to that. If there is, let me know. Otherwise, all in favor of the original motion, please state aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Hearing none, motion passes. Takes us to action item B, 2023 safety performance targets. Connor McDonald.
Good evening, Connor McDonald, TPO staff. I can share my screen, or if it's done from the room, I can do that as well.
Share your screen. If not, I can run your slides for you.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing. But if I'm able to be a co-host, I can share. Thank you, I appreciate that. Again, Connor McDonald, TPO staff. Good evening. I'm here to present the 2023 safety performance targets. So just as a background, the 2012 Federal Moving Ahead for Progress and the 21st Century Act requires MPOs to set performance targets related to transportation systems and its safety. And this act is now known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The legislation the aim is to create a streamlined, performance-based and multimodal program to address the many challenges facing the U.S. transportation system. And within this act, there are 6 categories of targets. Next slide, please. For 2023, we're updating many of the targets, with safety being this month, potentially greenhouse targets next month in March, pavement and bridge condition and travel time reliability in April, and transit asset management and public transportation agency safety later in the year. For today's safety performance targets, there are 7 targets to be set. fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, fatality rate against VMT, number of serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average, and that again against VMT, a number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average are all required targets in the legislation. And the Hillsborough TPO has elected to set 2 additional targets, which would be the number of fatalities and motorcycle fatalities on a 5-year rolling average. So in the 2045 LRTP, TPO and its staff looked at the historical spending trends and sales tax forecasts to predict the extent to which the targets can be realistically reduced. So what you're looking at is the dollar amount of transportation investments that would be invested in the sales tax scenario. We looked at the benefit we could achieve by investing in safety projects. So with the sales tax, that would be 3%, and without the sales tax, which we'll be looking at today, it's estimated that we can reduce these statistics by 1%. This data-driven realistic approach not only follows the original legislation, but it is highlighted as a Federal Highway Administration best practice. Next slide, please. So again, the targets, as you may remember, in 2021, there was an all-time high of 255 fatalities. In 2022, when we pulled this data, there were 219 fatalities. While this is a significant drop, we recognize that 219 fatalities is still a great loss. So using previous years as a measurement of trend and then applying that 1% reduction factor, we're recommending a realistic data-driven target of no more than 214 annual fatalities for 2023. For fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, we predicted the average for fiscal year 23, which contains that higher year of 2021, and apply that 1% reduction factor. Because this is a 5-year rolling average, it does contain that higher year in 2021. Yes, and if we're able to continue that downward trend that we saw in 2022, this will eventually reduce as the 5-year averages roll forward. Next slide, please. For fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, we're seeing an increase due to previous years again. However, the continued trend of lower fatalities will likely bring this number down in future years, but recommending a target of 1.56 for the 5 years. Next slide, please. For motorcycle fatalities in 2022, there was a significant increase. This increase averaged with the previous 4 years, and the applied reduction factor leaves us with a realistic data-driven target of no more than 40.21. Next slide, please. For annual serious injuries, we've seen a downward trend since the 2017 average. With the reduction factor, we're recommending a target of no more than 1,084 serious injuries for fiscal year 23, or not fiscal year, the 5-year average of 2019 through 2023. Next slide, please. For serious injuries compared to vehicle miles traveled, we're also seeing a reduction. Here, we're recommending a target of no more than 7.56. This slide shows non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, which non-motorized primarily refers to bicycles and pedestrians. And we have seen the increase in those crashes with the 5-year rolling average, and applying that reduction factor, we're recommending a target of no more than 240 year in calendar year 2023, those 5 years. For our report card, you can see that 2 of the 7 targets were met. So we certainly like to implement more strategies to reduce these targets. And I'll leave you a minute here to review this. Next slide, please. With that, I'd like to share 2 takeaways. So 1, although several targets were not met, or many of the targets were not met, in 2022 to show a decrease in fatalities and serious injuries. And another takeaway is that motorcycle fatalities and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries saw upward trends in calendar year 2022. Next slide, please. So that with that, we'd like to share some 2022 national risk factors for crash deaths from NHTCA, traffic safety facts. So nighttime and weekend driving were proportionally higher in 2022. Speeding was higher, unrestrained, also no seatbelt, and impaired driving were all higher in 2022. Next slide, please. Considering those, we're showing some local relation and implementation examples. In the MPO and local government toolbox, we can design and prioritize safety projects and capital improvement plans. In the TIP, we prioritize projects that are lower cost and or shovel ready. The TPO also has a speed management action plan, of which some of the recommendations are to design self-enforcing roadways, which could be narrow travel lanes, roundabouts, and speed humps. Another recommendation is to set and communicate safe speed limits. And finally, enforcing safe speed limits. Next slide, please. An example of local physical implementation is the Fletcher Avenue Complete Streets project. So before redesign and construction, the corridor saw 93 fatal and serious injury crashes. After implementation of hawk signals, raised medians, and other treatments, the corridor saw a reduction to 38 fatal and serious injury crashes from 2015 to 2018. The Fletcher Avenue treatments are a shining success story, and there are more to come. So we've been working with several similar projects with local jurisdictions, Bullard Parkway and Civil Terrace, Collins Street in Plant City, Haban Avenue in the city of Tampa, Sheldon Road in unincorporated Hillsborough County, and not to mention the nearly $40 million in Safe Streets for All grants announced today for the county and city of Tampa. So the 2023 proposed performance targets on this slide, annual fatalities, no more than 214. Annual fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 224. Motorcycle fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 40. Annual serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 1,084. Non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 241. Fatality rate per, and this is a typo, per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 1.56. And serious injury rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 7.56. And with that, I'll take your questions, comments, and the recommended action today is to approve the 2023 safety performance targets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Connor. Before we go to the recommended action, are there questions or discussion? Josh Frank in the room.
A couple questions and one comment is, I think, Connor, I appreciate the presentation. Similar to the state of the system report we talked about last time, these, first of all, the numbers are a little hard to understand how they were calculated. I'm not totally sure what we're approving. I'm kind of going on faith that you guys have got a method and it's probably peer reviewed and required in some aspect, but at least an introductory slide in the future to sort of illustrate how these numbers are created would be helpful.
Okay.
Because otherwise it's just kind of like we have to take your word for it. And I don't know the difference between 1.21 and 1.11, how that correlates. So it's a bit abstract. The second thing I was going to ask is, you said this is a requirement based off of federal policy. So I'm assuming there are, at least for the 5 that are required, similar numbers in other comparable metro areas, if not in the US and in the state. I think it would be helpful for us to see how we're faring trend-wise with comparable metro areas. Because again, just based off this presentation, it's a bit abstract in that sense too, that we don't really know how we're doing against our peers and whether or not we're, standing out negatively or positively or in line with the trend nationwide. So just a little bit more context in that regard, I think would be very helpful. And that's all I've got. Thanks.
Any other discussion or questions in the room?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in your last slide, you have the target fatality as less than 214 deaths. Why don't we have it as a zero?
Excellent question. The legislation requires that it's data-driven and realistic. So we look at trends over previous years and apply a reduction factor based on the available spending. So while the TPO does have a Vision Zero, action plan, setting this target is required to be realistic for the calendar year.
Any follow-up?
I mean, thank you, I understand your response, I just don't think that we should vote for something where it says we're gonna be okay for the next year to have 200 people die. And, no, 214 people die.
I don't think that's what we're voting on, though. It almost sounds like we're voting on math.
Hold on. Is there anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Sharon Gavon?
It almost sounds like, are we voting just to say, like, we agree with these charts?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's required to set a target. So the charts are for illustration on how the safety was in calendar year 2022, and then the targets would be what the action item is.
So can I respond? Our interpretation of the guidance issued by FHWA, specifically to be realistic and data-driven, is to forecast crashes out based on current data that's both realistic and data-driven. And because we have already forecasted what the achievable reductions would be based on investments, we also believe that the 1% reduction is realistic and data-driven estimate of what we can achieve, hence the target. There are other MPOs, TPOs that approach it slightly differently. However, we don't have confidence that theirs can be justified based on data and based on realism. As an example, some years back, the state set a statewide target of 0, recognizing that it's a 1-year target. FHWA came back to them and said, this isn't realistic nor data-driven, and there were some penalties applied to FDOT. They had to develop an updated highway safety improvement plan and had to do a lot of additional work because they were setting an aspirational target. So to avoid that headache, we have stuck to the methodology that city approved LRTP.
Sharon, another question?
Well, I'm actually going to just, I think, rephrase. So what you're saying is that what we are approving is this goal to use as a realistic reason to approve other things.
I would be cautious to differentiate between the goal. Like, we do have a long-term goal of 0, but realistically, what can we achieve in the next year with the funding that we do have? So like the 1-year target, we don't like it, but that's what we forecasted based on the data and what we have reasonably achieved to expect. Would love to get to 0, so that's like the goal, but we believe that's a little more aspirational.
Excuse me, Chair.
Christina Costa, is that you?
Actually, it's Gail, the recorder. It has been asked if the goal slide could be brought back up on the screen, please.
Let me see if I can move these because.
Mr. Chair, I do have my hand up, though, if you are ready to hear me.
Not yet. Hold on.
Having some trouble navigating this.
If you go online, you can actually get
Yeah,
the
on our
results.
screens, there's nothing.
I'm not sure how to get it to come up.
I think that's the right one, Johnny, if you can make it bigger for us.
What you're seeing on the screen is not on my laptop. That's why I can't select the view with my cursor.
Is what's on the screen now what was requested by whomever requested it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Christine, was that you? Did you have a question?
I do have 2 questions for Connor. And then I'd like to just enter a little statement about the 2019 speed study. First I'll just say a couple things. This is a quote that I keep on my phone that I can use about the 2019 speed study. And I use this tonight to ensure that everybody who's on this call knows about the study and how powerful it is. Because the exercise we're doing right now, I just call it the budgeting of death, because we do it every year and it's not fun any of the years. But the speed study revealed that 70% of our top 20 high injury corridors in Hillsborough County have posted speed limits that are 5 to 10 miles above the national best practice. And an additional 15%, so now we're at 85% of our crash corridors are posted at 15 to 20 miles an hour higher than what is recommended by ITE and CNU. And I urge you all to keep in mind that posted speed limits are one thing, and then actual speed limits are usually 5 to 10 miles an hour higher. So we have a real speed issue, and I wanted to repeat that note. So my questions for you, Connor, are I've seen some communities advocating for the metric not to be crashes or incidences by VMT, but rather by population. So I wondered if you could speak to that. And the other question I have is, hooray for the Safe Streets grants that were announced and celebrated initially today. Do you see any impact coming from those, and how long do you think that would take? Thank you.
Yeah, to answer your first question, I have seen statistics where they're comparing against population, and that's something that we could look at in the future for sure, as an elective target, if that's where you're leading with that. And the second question, related to when we would see those implementations, it's those grants, I believe, and don't quote me on this, we could ask Lisa. I actually believe Lisa's on the line, but they're for construction, they're construction ready projects. So hopefully we could see those sooner. They're not planning level.
Thank you.
Is that it, Christine? Okay, as long as I'm looking at the wall here, any other questions online from our virtual attendees?
I have a question.
Any other questions online?
I just have a question about, Connor, do you have the number? I'm sure you do, but the number of the actual fatalities for the past 2 years?
For 2021 and 2022?
Yes, please.
Yes, 2021 was 255, and 2022 was 219 when we pulled the data.
I'm sorry, Connor, are you mining data or are you done?
No, he's not looking at.
He's mining data? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was for the last 2 years. I didn't know if you had heard me. For 2021, it was 255 and 22 is 2019. Did I miss a second part of that question? I apologize.
No, that was it. So our goal for 2023 is to only reduce the number of fatalities by 5 people. Can we try to budget a little bit to maybe 200 people? I think each life matters. Only 5 people a year difference from last year. Can we do better?
We agree with you that we should be doing better, but the selection without any basis is like capricious almost. I mean, there's nothing preventing us from setting that, let's say, but just picking a number, we don't think would meet the requirement for the data-driven and realistic.
Where did we get the number?
So based on the previous 10 years of crash data, we forecasted it out to 2023. So we charted them all. We drew a straight linear trend line through 2023 that showed that we're expecting like 219 or 216 fatalities, and then apply that 1% reduction, which brings it to 214.
All right, any other questions in the room? Josh Frank?
Just really quickly, I think there's two ways to reduce this number. One is to reduce the crashes and number of people. The other is reduce the VFT. And a lot of the metrics we're looking at is per 100 VFT, whether it's 100,000, I'm not sure. I think it is. But similar to the last report we saw about the state of the system, I still believe that that is a key path to lowering all these metrics in an environment where we don't have a lot of resources, which is the problem with this forecast. You know, there's no real method to get it down to zero at this point, realistically, statistically. And so I would just encourage staff to think about what we've talked about before in setting a standard for reduction in VMT as a way to do that. There's another way to reduce these fatalities, because it's the safety measures are expensive, and there are other things that can be done less expensively to reduce VMT.
Thank you for those comments. Bill, did I see your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did not catch the number of fatalities for last year that I had estimated. Was that 205?
219.
219 for last year, and the previous year
255.
255. I want to get that information from possible amendment. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? In the room, online? I think I see a hand up for Artie Fryer. Do my eyes deceive me?
Yes, I did have the hand up and I was trying to lower it. But thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious now, and this just may be an obvious question, but are the number of vehicles on the roadway factored into any of this data?
No.
And if it isn't, is that something that needs to be considered? I mean, it seems to me more vehicles are likely to increase the number of crashes in addition to speed limit. So,
Do you want to take that, or should I?
yeah,
I can
Yes.
take part of it. So this isn't, this statement is not necessarily from our analysis, but we've looked at the comparison between fatalities and VMT just for awareness, and this is not analysis or necessarily TPO or TPO staff's opinion, but fewer cars on the roadway could mean higher crashes. Sometimes it means higher speeds, etc. And Johnny, could you add to that?
Yeah, Artie, I was going to say that the number of cars on the road is only factored in as a consideration that they contribute to overall VMT. And I think Connor's right on the mark about the congestion with the congestion we saw prior to COVID was actually driving down the number of crashes, resulting in serious injuries and fatalities. When that traffic started to alleviate, that allowed drivers to go much faster. And as a result, the crashes that did occur, where previously may have been limited to property damage only, were almost converted into injury and fatalities.
Artie, did that satisfy your inquiry?
Oh, that's fine. That I appreciate the information.
Okay, I see no more hands on the wall. I don't see any hands in the room. Anything else? Okay.
I have my hand up, Rick, Mr. Chairman. It's
Oh.
Christine.
Last shot at the apple.
Last shot. I just want to make it clarify that we're talking about here is the number of fatalities, but we are not including the serious injuries. Serious injuries are those that are like lifelong lasting injuries and impairments. Is that correct?
Yes, so serious injuries would not be, these would be exactly that definition of serious injuries.
Christine, there are 2 targets that pertain to serious injuries. Scroll back up. So one is annual serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average, and the other is serious injury rate per 100 million BMT. And actually, non-motorized serious injuries is another target combined with non-motorized fatalities.
Thank you, Johnny.
I would just invite everyone's attention, if you aren't particularly familiar with Zoom, we do have a chat function, and there are some folks that are offering some comments in the chat. So you might want to go in and take a look. Some are from staff, some are from folks that I guess are listening in on our meeting. I'm not
Mr. Chair, this is the recorder.
Yes.
I am capturing a lot of that chat, and that will be included in the minutes as well.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate that. But in terms of real time, in case anything in the chat prompts a question from anyone on the committee, I just want you to be aware that it's there. And we do seem to have some activity tonight. Okay, can we go back to the request slide?
It's about the comments specifically, Mr. Chair. I would make a motion that for any staff comments, I'd ask them to deliver them orally so we can all hear them in real time as opposed to the chat. I don't know how anybody else feels about that.
Okay, that's being offered as a suggestion to staff. Yes? Okay.
Well, I motion that if someone wants to second it.
Did staff hear that? No, you did.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you want, go ahead. If you have a motion to make, go ahead and restate it, please.
The motion would be that for any staff comments, I would ask them to be delivered orally. That way that for anybody that at home may be viewing this presentation or viewing this presentation later, that they're appropriately recorded in that way.
Since it's being presented as a motion rather than a suggestion, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
There's a second. Does this require any discussion? Nope. All right, we take a voice vote on this. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We go back to the recommended action to approve the calendar year 2023 safety performance targets. Is there a motion? I'll motion. All right, Steve Honeycutt moves forward the recommended action. Is there a second? Second. Don Skelton seconds. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion. Realizing that these are data driven, there are some federal requirements. I take note of the comments during the earlier discussion that we should try to be more aspirational than looking at 214 deaths in our county. This committee has the ability to make recommendations to the TPO board. The TPO board certainly has a discretion of accepting those recommendations or altering them or not accepting them at all. So to that end, I would move that the target for fatalities be amended to be 200 for the coming year, and that staff seek data that could possibly support that as an aspirational recommendation to the TPO. Thank you.
Let me restate that as best I can, Bill. Please follow along with the bill. Make sure the bouncing ball is going right. Your motion is to amend the target for fatalities, that it be amended to 200 for the coming calendar year. and that staff be encouraged to find data to support that amendment. Is that fair? Okay.
Thank
With that stated amendment and my restatement, is there a second?
Second.
Don Skelton is the second man today. Very good. Thank you. We have an amendment and a second. Any discussion on the amendment? Mr. Majerski.
I guess it's hard for me to understand how we can quote find data to support that. I mean, I think we can state that this would be an aspirational goal, but I think it would be, short of, dedicating another gazillion dollars to safety, which may be a proper thing. I don't think we can make up data to support that, but I agree with having that as an aspirational goal. But I think trying to find data to support it, I don't think that exists.
Josh Frank.
Well, I generally agree. I mean, I think the county has an aspirational goal in Vision Zero. I don't think setting an aspiration of 200 is great. The aspiration of 0, I think, is the target that we need to shoot for. And I think the county is on record as saying as such. I would say that perhaps a more amenable way to go about this, rather than arbitrarily make a number, the decision is to reaffirm in supporting this or accepting this, approving it, that there is we reaffirm that Vision Zero aspiration in addition to approving this. I think that is, again, rather than just deciding a number, which in this case maybe it's because it's a round number, but I think aspirationally, I would say 0 is the number we need to be aiming for. So I think we can't change these numbers, really. I mean, we could, but it wouldn't mean anything. We'd still be failing because we're not hitting 0. So I would say that I'm not going to vote for the number. I really don't think it makes a difference. I think it would be better to also just recommend that staff reaffirm our commitment to Vision Zero.
All right. Any further discussion on the proposed amendment?
Well, I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman. Who is Mike Lamarca?
Yes. As far as I know, he's a guest who is commenting online in our chat.
Just didn't
Not
know.
a member of the committee.
Or staff, I wasn't sure. That's no. I just like on that point. I'd like to second Josh's comments about making sure we're reaffirming our Vision Zero goals.
Okay. My peripheral vision brings me over here to IIC.
I would like to amend the amendment to change it from the number 200 to actually reducing the percent of reduction for a target from 1% to maybe 1.2, 1.5% per year.
Right. You're now beginning to test the limits of my Robert's rules.
Point of order,
Are
Mr.
you-
Chairman.
I don't know.
Wait, are you offering a substitute motion?
Yes.
Right, then offer a substitute
I would
motion.
like to offer a substitute motion to have a goal of reduction for all the targets, instead of 1% from last year to 1.5% for 2023.
So what I am hearing is that you are offering a substitute motion to amend the percentage targets to
1.5% instead of 1%
One
for
point-
all the target goals of 2023.
Madam Secretary, were you able to capture that?
Yes, sir.
You heard it? Okay. There's a substitute motion on the floor now. Is there a second to the substitute motion?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Prindle?
I believe procedurally, we have to vote on the amendment before we could put forth a substitute motion. So I think my recollection of rules is that we need to vote this up or down, and then once it passes, then she could offer the substitute motion.
I would prefer to do it that way, but I'm going to defer to my understanding and recollection of Robert's rules, which is that substitute motions are addressed in the same fashion as an amendment would be. She's offering a substitute motion that will either rise or fall on the second. So is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the substitute motion?
Mr. Chair, this is Christine. I was going to offer a substitute to the substitute. Can we do that first or
Christine,
to Bill's?
you're gonna pocket that, all right? We're not going down that road. Let's deal with what we have on the table right now. If you want to make another motion afterwards, please feel free. On the substitute motion, is there any discussion? Any questions? I'm going to ask for a voice vote on this. All in favor of the substitute motion? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay.
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 All right. Call vote, please.
Mr. Chair, before I call the roll call, may I ask who seconded that substitute motion?
Sharon Gamond, I believe.
Thank you. Okay, and the roll call vote, Bill Roberts?
No.
I'm sorry,
No.
Rick Fernandez,
No.
Carolyn Brown,
No.
Hoyt Prindle,
No.
Aya Yassin,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Nicole Rice,
No.
Christina Costa,
No.
Artie Fryer,
No.
Don Skelton,
No.
Ed Marszewski,
Yes.
Sharon Gamond,
Yes.
Joshua Frank.
No.
The motion fails 9-4.
All right, the substitute motion having failed, we're now back to the amendment that was proposed by Mr. Roberts. Do we need a recollection refresher on what that was? Bill, would you mind restating, please? I think you wanted to tick the number down from 214 to 220 on fatalities.
Chair, the motion, as best I recall, was to amend the recommended target for fatalities to the number of 200. To request that the staff analyze the data and see if that number can be justified.
Okay. And we,
Closest I can.
okay, that's pretty darn close to what I've got in my notes. And if I recall, there was a second from Mr. Skelton on that. Is there any further discussion on the amendment?
Yes, I wonder if, I just wondered if instead of encouraging the staff to find the data that would support it, can we encourage the staff to find the projects that will support it? Given we have these grants now and shovel-ready projects will be considered. Just a thought for Mr. Roberts, if he wants to consider substituting the data for projects that the staff is encouraged to find.
Thank you for that comment. We have an amendment before us. Any other discussion or questions? Online, any other discussion or questions? All right. Let's bring the amendment up for a vote. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Carolyn Brown,
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Aya Yassin,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Nicole Rice,
Yes.
Christina Costa,
Yes.
Artie Fryer,
No.
Don Skelton,
Yep.
Ed Marszewski,
No.
Sharon Gamond,
Yes.
Joshua Frank.
No.
The motion passes 10-3.
Okay, thank you. Now we are back to the original, the recommended action. To approve the calendar year, can I have that back, please? Yep. To approve the calendar year 2023 safety performance targets. I believe we had an original motion. I forget who even made it now. Wait,
I have Stephen Hollenkamp, seconded by Don Skelton.
all right, Steve. All right, the movements don't remember that they did it anymore. So, okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussions on the original motion now as amended? In the room, no. Online, I see no hands. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Chair Christina Costa still has her hand raised. I don't know if it's a continuation or I thought she just took it down. Okay, I will do that roll call. Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Carolyn Brown,
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Ayia Yasin,
Yes.
Steve Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Nicole Rice,
Yes.
Christina Costa,
Yes.
Artie Fryer,
Yes.
Don Skelton,
Yes.
Ed Mrzyuski,
Yes.
Sharon Gamond,
Yes.
Joshua Frank.
Mercifully, yes.
Motion passes 13-0.
All right, thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Chairman, if I thank you for recognizing me. I may want to make one comment. I thought Christina Costa's suggestion was excellent. And I'd like to be on record as including projects and ways to reduce crashes and fatalities overall in my request for a data analysis. So thank you for letting me express that.
Thank you. Right, I think that ends our action items. Moving on to status reports. I note the time. We have 25 minutes left to the meeting. I have in my mind a hard stop at 8, but what that actually means is that at 8 o'clock, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. If we're not done, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. It'll be up to each of you to decide whether or not you want to stay here and continue litigating whatever is still on our agenda. So I'll leave it up to you, but I would ask that those who are presenting under status reports take note of the time limits. Gibsonton Drive, PD&E, Johnny? I'm sorry. No, we're on Gibsonton Drive. If you're looking, look at your agenda, you're probably looking at the wrong agenda.
Wrong committee.
You're looking at an agenda that's for the wrong committee. The agenda for this committee has Gibsonton Drive PD&E kickoff. I don't know why we got the wrong paperwork at the top, but we did. Mr. Prindle?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the Gandy Boulevard Bridge study to be a first status report since Mr. Wong is here, and I find that to be a very important report.
Let me comment on. All right, you made a motion. Fine. Is there a second? Any discussion?
Can you please repeat the motion?
To move the Gandy Boulevard Bridge PD&E to the first status report the committee addresses.
Thank you.
Well, let me start off with the discussion. The Gandy Boulevard Bridge PD&E, I believe, was originally on this agenda as the #1 item. I asked that it be moved back. And the reason I asked it to be moved back is because it is not on the agenda for the TPO board next week. So it is not a time sensitive issue. Whereas the Gibsonton Drive PD&E is. That particular PD&E is on the TPO board meeting agenda for next week. So I wanted to address the things that the TPO board was actually going to be getting to next week. And that's the end of that.
Well,
That's why I did it.
In light of your comment, which I was not aware of, I will withdraw the motion.
Okay, well, thank you. And hopefully we'll get to it anyway. But,
All right, Johnny Wong, TPO staff, representing on behalf of Ashley Hensel from FDOT. I'm not the project manager, so please withhold any difficult questions. This project is for a PD&E study on Gibsonton Drive from Fernhill Drive out to US 301. The segment is a little shy of 1 mile in length. DOT believes that it's an important east-west connection. We agree. This is actually priority number 81 on the TIP project list. It connects to a minor job cluster. Gibsonton Drive is a very commercial corridor. And as of this year, it has a current volume capacity ratio of 1.0 and is forecasted to exceed its capacity before 2045. It's describing the TIP as a widening project, taking it from 4 to 6 lanes. So this PBE will take a look at ways to increase capacity through widening and also address some safety concerns along the road. That purpose and need, as I just described, is included on the PowerPoint slide in front of you. In the TPO's analysis, this segment is projected to be over capacity by more than 10% by 2045. There are already operational treatments funded in fiscal year 25 at Gibsonton and I-75, and so this work will build on top of that. This slide shows the existing typical section. It's about 125 feet, in some areas greater than that. The right-of-way is broken out as follows: 2 5-foot sidewalks, a 4-foot paved shoulder with no bike lanes, 6 12-foot through lanes, a 22-foot median with 2-way left turn lanes. DOT is coordinating with Hillsborough County on concepts. The concept will narrow lane widths from 12 feet to 11 feet and add 2 additional through lanes, again taking it from 4 to 6. They'll add curb and gutter on each side. The multimodal enhancements that were described will be to fill in sidewalk gaps, upgrade the sidewalks from 4 feet to 6, add 7-foot buffered bike lanes, and also add a 12-foot shared use pattern on both sides. Some intersections may get turn lane improvements. This is a high crash corridor. 910 total crashes over the past 5 years. Pulled some data just before this meeting. 36 of those 910 were either fatalities or serious injuries. Of the 36 injury crashes, 5 involved either a cyclist or pedestrian. They include some information on drainage improvements that will be considered as part of the PD&E study, as well as the natural resources, cultural, socioeconomic, and physical. There was some flyers mailed out in December announcing the kickoff. DOT has a public engagement process that's outlined on this slide. They have already collected data. Next, they're going to move into the engineering and environmental analysis that should wrap up by the 3rd quarter of this year. They will present the results at a public hearing in the 4th quarter of this year. And for any questions, the PM on this project is Ashley Hensel. So if you have any questions, you can either email them to me, CC Ashley, or send them directly to Ashley. Any questions? I don't have too many answers, so please be discreet.
Any questions for Johnny? And I assume Ashley is not around.
That's correct.
She's not online. That's okay. Any questions for Johnny?
Are we moving this, or is
No,
it
it's
not
a status report, just an update. No? All right. Vicky has-
Chairman, I apologize, Chairman, request to be acknowledged.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, Johnny, when it shows the need of it being like 6 times higher on the crash, what is causing this? And are there a bunch of schools along this corridor? I'm slightly confused about where the need is coming from. It doesn't make it very clear in this. Will that become clear in the next presentation?
Nikki, I can't promise what info DOT will present. This will be going to other committees this month and also to the board. So if you want to have DOT staff present a deeper analysis into the crash causes, I can pass that request along to them. I'm not personally too familiar with the corridor other than just knowing that it's highly commercial. It looks like there's plenty of strip developments along the segment.
I think it's neighborhood, isn't it? Isn't it? Aren't there neighborhoods coming in and out of that? And I believe there are some schools. I'm just confused about why the ratio is so high for the impacts, and if they could possibly put that into the presentation when they bring it before the board to justify the need to widen it and create more induced demand.
Johnny, you anticipate Ashley Hensel making the presentation to the board?
Either Ashley or another rep from DOT, but it won't be TPO staff, it'll be someone on their side.
The only thing I really could suggest is it might be helpful if DOT staff actually were to show up, at least be online to answer these kinds of questions. If they expect these status reports to be meaningful to us, but I'll leave that there. It's really not fair to TPO staff to try to pick up the water. Okay, is that the end of that status report?
Yes.
All right. No other questions or comments? Line item B under status reports is the special meeting to reconsider Reconnecting Communities pilot program grant application. This was the board meeting that was held on the 25th of January, I believe. Johnny advised that Gina Torres and Amber Simmons would be presenting on this. Okay, Amber, true.
Yes. Gina, are you online?
Yep, I'm right here. Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Who is that?
Perfect. This is Amber. Hi, I'm Amber Simmons, TPO staff, and I'll make this brief for you.
All right.
The brief 8-slide presentation is the status report from the special board meeting held last week from the Reconnecting Communities pilot grant application. Next slide. We reviewed the history of the project from 2019 to May 2022, beginning with the recommendation of the study by the CAC, the high cost of the study that ultimately led to the study's removal from the UPWP in May of 2020, and the new Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, which would present the opportunity to relook at the study. And the projects being listed in the current year UPWP as other recommended projects contingent on funding. And the RCP grant was the potential funding source. Next slide. The grant purpose was reviewed to remind and explain to the board that there were two separate pots of funding, planning and capital, and that each eligible applicant was allowed up to 3 separate applications. So therefore, there was a statement that the planning grant may have been in competition with the City of Tampa's capital grant, which was incorrect. Next slide. We demonstrated the various types of projects that were examples of planning projects that were from federal highway presentation. They included various types such as visiting, placemaking, feasibility studies, cost to convert facilities versus maintenance. And FHWA included examples from across the country that had at their core the purpose of reconnecting communities. Next slide. To provide additional information, we quoted the TPO proposal and its intent. The proposal was for a planning study to look at the feasibility of options to make I-275 a better neighbor, including the possibility of re-envisioning the highway as an at-grade boulevard. We also stated other details within that proposal. Next slide. We provided information on the $1.2 million budget, as well as the detail from the budget narrative explaining that it was more than just pictures and options for I-275. There was an extensive objective technical analysis as well. Next slide. At the January 11th board meeting, additional information was requested and feedback from the Reconnecting Communities pilot program team was sought. On January 17th, the Reconnecting Communities team responded and made it clear that any award would require the consideration of an at-grade option as well as other alternatives. Next slide. The TPO's recommendation was to consider the withdrawal of the RCP grant application. The TPO board ultimately voted 11-5 to withdraw the application and to look for the fiscal year 23 application to reconsider submitting without the Boulevard option included. It was announced at the end of last week that the fiscal year 22 award winners will be announced very soon, and that the fiscal year 23 RCP grant application should be released shortly thereafter. Really just a guesstimate on my end would be that it'd be late spring or early summer, but that's truly just a guesstimate. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Any questions for Amber? Does Gina have anything?
I think Gina's just on tap to answer questions.
Yeah, I'm here and I'm listening and I'm here if there's a question I can help with.
All right. Does anyone have questions for Amber? None? So
I just need like just clarification. So we're requesting that we did not go on to submit, like we're going to withdraw the application.
The application has been withdrawn.
Has to be withdrawn. And that's because it included the Boulevard concept, or that's
Yes. Well,
any other questions? Amber, this is Rick Fernandez. I do have a question, really probably a clarification of the record. Could you put that last slide back up again? The recommended action. The recommended action being to consider withdrawing the RCP grant application. When the moving board member made his motion to withdraw the grant application, he did so with the statement that he was moving to follow the recommendation of TPO staff to withdraw the application. I don't read this slide as being a recommendation by TPO staff to withdraw the recommendation or the application. So my question, I guess, very simple. Did in fact TPO staff recommend the withdrawal of this application or not?
Our TPO staff offered the action of considering withdrawing the application.
I can do that. So you're telling me that the motion as made, I'm trying to think, it was Mr. Koenig, I think, made that motion. Kluge, I'm sorry, there's no Koenig. Kluge from the Port Authority, if I'm not mistaken, that his motion misstated the board recommendation or the TPO staff recommendation. Is that correct?
Our recommendation was to consider the withdrawal. I believe there was additional commentary after that where he clarified that, but I don't have that information in front of me.
Okay. In any event, TPO staff did not recommend withdrawal. That you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, we were comfortable considering the withdrawal. We did not say withdraw.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Amber? Sharon?
I mean, isn't that double talk? What are we talking about? So we're discussing whether we should even consider withdrawing, or we're discussing whether we'll be okay with them thinking about withdrawing the grant? Is that what the answer is right now?
It's been withdrawn. It's done for now. And
this is just informational.
It's informational. The tape of the meeting is on YouTube. You can look at it. It's about an hour, 15 minutes long. And you can draw your own conclusions as to what it is. But in any event, yes, Mr. Predville.
I'd like to make a motion that this committee sends to the TPO board that states that is the opinion of this committee that the TPO board erred in withdrawing the grant application.
Okay, that's simple and short and sweet. Is there a second?
I second.
Second.
Christina Costa.
All right. We're into discussion on a motion that has been seconded. Ed Majerski.
You know, they voted on it. They did the action they took 11-5. So what are you gonna do now? Poke them in the eye with a stick?
I think we're representatives of this community appointed by many of those members and others. And it's not poking them in the eye and a stick. Like I will tell them to their face that they're wrong. But, you know, we're here to represent the views of the committee. I made a motion. We could vote it up or vote it down, but I think they erred. And I think it's important to know that the representatives, many of them they put on this committee, think that they erred. And if people don't agree with that, I vote it down. But that's my opinion.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Aya?
I think that it is important that we have a decision that is like actionable, like productive. So what can we as a committee take to the board to have a more productive decision? I think let's all think about that. Now that they withdrew the application, what would be the next step to achieve our goals as a committee? So I don't know. I know I'm not in the right place right now to make a motion, but I would like to make a motion later on after discussions when I'm allowed.
Any other questions or comments on the motion as stated by Mr. Prindle? Stephen Hogkep.
Well, I don't fully understand this whole story and why it was withdrawn. What's the reason that you think they were wrong to withdraw? Just that you support the Boulevard project, or you think we have a chance of getting this grant?
Let me take a stab at it. So a couple of months back, it was brought to the attention of the TPO board that there was never formal action by the board taken to support submitting the RCP grant. Our response was that because this was adopted into the Unified Planning Work Program, and there were some potential funding sources listed beneath it, one of them was the RCP grant, that would have given TPO staff the power to submit it in hopes of winning the grant. But because there was never an official action item taken to the board specifically saying, hey, we're taking this, going to submit it, the special meeting was called. And at that special meeting, the board members, again, decided to direct staff to withdraw the application for this year.
And they could have instead just passed the motion to support this.
They could have directed us to keep the application. I mean, we did submit it, so FHWA received it already. The action that they directed us to was to contact FHWA and withdraw our app from consideration for this year.
Why?
We don't have enough time in the evening to get into all that. The short answer is there was an election. There are different people on the TPO board now than there were when this came through the first time. That's democracy, is the way it works. So here we are. Any other questions or comments?
I would like to comment that I encourage the committee members who are not familiar with it to watch the video on YouTube, and you can also replay that at 125% speed so that it is quick. It's a good way to watch a lot of content without having to, suffer through the ums and ahs like I'm speaking right now. But I would say that I did attend that. I attempted to attend that meeting and the technology was bad. There were a lot of people seeming to not connect to this system, and so it was very frustrating. But there were many comments that reflected fear and ignorance about what the Boulevard project is, and that was disheartening. So I'm going to vote in favor of sending the message that we believe it was not a good decision on their part.
Josh?
I just want to, I'm not going to repeat anything that anybody else said because I think everybody said everything that I would ever want to say, so I'm appreciative of that. I would just say that I hope Christine was not making a comment about the length of my presentation being a negative because I'm a long-winded person. So I won't take offense.
Not at all. Not at all, Josh.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments on the motion?
I'm sorry, what was it? So the motion is.
Wait, would you restate your motion, please?
The motion, as I best remember it, is to express that it's the view of this Citizens Advisory Committee that the TPO board erred in withdrawing the grant application.
And that motion was seconded by Christina Costa. I see no other discussion in the room. I don't see any hands up online. Call a roll on this, please, Madam Secretary.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to get that motion down. Okay. Bill Roberts,
No.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Carolyn Brown,
No.
Hoyt Brindle,
Yes.
Aya Yassin,
Draw. I'm not, can I just vote, can I not vote on this one? I don't know.
I don't think you're allowed to abstain. You can be out of the room. Just want to go run outside.
No.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Nicole Rice,
Yes.
Christina Costa,
Yes.
Artie Fryer,
No.
Don Skelton,
No.
Ed Mrzyuski,
No.
Sharon Gamond,
I say yes.
Josh Frank.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-6.
Thank you. That'll be reported. Takes us to the Gandy Boulevard Bridge, PD&E. We are straight up at 8 o'clock, so I'm going to be true to my word, pass the gavel. You accept the gavel, sir? Yeah. All right. As I said earlier, I set 8 o'clock as a hard stop for the meeting. So I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second by the man of the second today. All right. Is there any discussion on motion to adjourn?
Does that mean we'll have the Gandy presentation later?
Anything that we don't reach today will be rolled over into new bit or old business at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Okay. Let's just do a voice vote on this. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Somebody's opposed? Did I hear? aye?
No, that I was late. I'm sorry. I agree with everyone else. I apologize.
All right, everybody's done? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Be safe out there.
Really? Yeah, we need it.
Yeah.